Then we have a gentleman that here is also going to come out. He has the protective gear on. He will come out again threatening her on her property, refuse to obey the commands, and then she will actually send the dog to make a bite here.
Whoa!
You can see they're very powerful.
Unbelievable.
Very powerful.
But the dogs are also highly obedient, and just like that, as she calls the dog off, he's gone.
That's correct. And then she downs the dog here. And then in this sequence, we're going to have the gentleman move back away. And this time she's going to stop the dog, like if a person that would give up and say, hey, I don't want no part of this game. And so she will send the dog to actually bite, and she will tell the dog to stop.
Amazing.
And once the dog stops, then we stimulate the dog in this training for doing correctly by actually letting him then go down and bite the bad guy again.
All right, so let's talk about how these dogs are trained to do this. They're much like natural-born athletes in the sense that Michael Jordan is, and Terrell Owens, and so on and so forth.
That's correct.
They're born with the ability.
That's absolutely correct.
And you select that, so that's part of your skill, but then you have to harness that.
Yes, and we train them, when they first come here from Germany, we start training them with little puppy tugs and puppy sleeves, where we show them how to make a grip on there and how to bite and how to grip somebody with a full mouth and to stop that person from whatever crime they might be committing.
And then they also have scent instincts that allow them to know when someone is emitting that fight or flight scent, and that's natural genetically in the dogs, but you also teach them to harness that. Unbelievable. That's not all that Tom does here. He also trains the dogs to seek out bombs and mold and termites, and when we return, we're going to showcase how that happens.
All right, thanks, Darren. We're a little worried about Darren's safety and the camera safety.
And if you didn't see Darren in the first half hour, you want to stay tuned for the second half hour. He's with dogs.
Canine dogs.
Canine dogs, protection dogs. I don't want to call them attack dogs. Protection dogs. And we're going to see if Darren actually, passes the muster with them a little bit. I'm hoping he puts on one of those suits. Welcome back to Kansas City Live. 1 minute they're calm and collected. The next, they are ferocious Fidos.
If you left off Fidos, I was going to say women.
Oh, my kids? Yeah, I don't know.
Darren Mark is finding out where police dogs are getting their bite. Hey, Darren.
No. Hey, guys, we are at Vom Kaiserhofe Training Center in DeSoto, Kansas, home to Tom Brenneman and his unbelievable dogs that he's been training for 30 years now. Dogs that he trains to do things like not only protect your home environment from intruders, but also to seek out bombs and mold and termites. So this has some practical application for folks like me in my house, but also has application for U.S. forces, local police departments, and on and on and on.
Absolutely. And this is a dog that's been selection tested for detecting bombs.
And when you say selection tested, just like in the case of Julie's dog, you actually go through a whole host of dogs and say, which one is genetically predisposed to doing this better than the others.
Absolutely. We'll probably look at 150 dogs to pick one. And this particular dog has high hunt drive. You can see he's a high drive guy.
Yep.
He has very high hunt drive and very high searching drive and very high prey drive, which is what we need for this here.
All right, so I kind of want you to explain to me how you get the dogs to do the work that they'll eventually do in the real world.
In this case here, we're running a training scenario here, what we call a bunny box training, where the dog actually is predator-prey.
Let's go into it.
He actually believes that he's searching for a bunny rabbit. Go ahead and start your sniff there, Chance. And we have the odor of bomb over here. And also along with that, we have his bunny, which is in this bunny box right here, as you can see. Now what we're working on is the focus of the animal and the concentration. So the dog smells the actual bomb, which is hidden in that box. We call it a bunny box. And now we'll bring the bunny out. This is just like a bunny rabbit hiding in a hole that the dog would see in the natural world.
So you've trained the dog to be obedient. You've trained it not to overreact. You've trained it to focus as it's doing right now.
There's concentration and focus on smelling that odor, so it tells the leadership, the handler, exactly where that bomb is at. Bunny out. Some flybys. As you can see the concentration in the animal here, just like a bunny rabbit would do in the real world if it was hiding in a hole. Now flip it. And there, the dog actually gets to kill its bunny. That's what he's actually doing there. He thinks, the dog doesn't really know that's a ball. The dog thinks that's a bunny rabbit.
So you're relying on the instincts that it was born with, basically.
Yes, we train through drive and the natural instinctual drives of the dog. Now we'll go get the bunny away. And here, I'll grab this real quick.
So whether it's a bomb or mold or termites, you basically coat the bunny or the ball with the related smell.
That's correct. That's correct. And in here, we're going to do and this is another what we call bunny box. This is an alert box over here. Go ahead and put him back up there, Chance. Find your gift. And we let him smell the odor. And again, we get the focus, the concentration is what we're looking for.
Yep.
And then we slowly start opening this. As you see how this opens, the bomb odor is actually behind here, so it doesn't harm the dog.
Yep.
And now, there's his bunny.
There it goes. Wow.
And then he gets to play with his bunny. And it's very, very good for the drive of the dogs. And of course, like we were talking about earlier, that's what we're selection for. It's like a natural trained athlete to a trained athlete. The natural athlete will always be better with the natural instinctual genetic drives.
And you guys work with breeders from across the world to find the dogs that you think are right for your training center, and this is the result, dogs like this. You can find out more information on Vom Kaiserhofe's training center on our website, NBCActionNews.com. Click on Kansas City Live and Where's Darren, and you will see everything you need to know. We'll see you later, guys.
See you, Darren.
Did you hear a little tremor in Darren's voice?
A little bit. It's kind of intimidating to watch from, this far away.
Lucky
Imagine
us.
right there, yeah.
Sabina Davidson did not kill Chris Wilson. She was not even present when Chris Wilson died. And therefore, it's a very big stretch to think that second-degree murder is the appropriate charge.
What do you think, audience? Do you agree? Is this extreme to label this woman a murderer? Did she? Not at all?
No. I think, pet owners have to be responsible for their pets, especially based on the things I'm hearing, the past history of these animals. The past history.
A lot of people had tears in their eyes hearing this story. Where were your tears coming from?
I was in a similar situation where my dog had in the past been known to bite and had been put in quarantine. He was a Rottweiler mix. I had tried to keep him tied up when the neighborhood kids would come up, but kids, you never know when they come up. We live on 10 acres, so they'd walk across the property. My neighbor's daughter had gotten bit again, and I just, had to take the decision that it was my responsibility to put my dog down. It was the hardest thing I'd ever had to do. But, I sure wouldn't want to be in this position, leaving my 4 children at home without a mom and, all these charges.
Or knowing that your dog had taken a life.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. See, this is a tug of war for people who love pets. But here's a case where this woman, Sabina, and her family did consider these dogs their pets. They loved these dogs. You saw the home video we've been rolling of her little children playing with these animals. Mr. Biggs says that there was an occasion where the dog got aggressive even with their own children, pinned down the little one. There was a report that one of the dogs had bitten one of her children. But even the dog that was put in quarantine, Sabina was still concerned about that dog, wasn't she, Mr. Biggs? She called the shelter to see how her dog was doing?
There was evidence presented at trial that after this incident, she called the shelter on a regular basis to check on the welfare of her animal, which we had seized and taken into custody so we could have that dog tested.
This is Michael Rodston. He's well known as being an animal rights activist and attorney. What's your reaction to this pet owner being labeled a murderer?
I don't think it's fair to do that to somebody in American system of justice. I see a very large case of damages in a civil court, punitive damages. They should lose whatever they have to pay for what happened to this family. But to use that emotional reason to make it a crime, it makes no sense, because the government is supposed to make crimes out of acts that have criminal type of intents, and when you take a failure to act and make that a murder, you're giving permission to the government to just criminalize anything people don't do. In our state in California, it's already been determined that you cannot punish parents for what their gang children do, and that's been taken out. So if a parent can't be liable for in a criminal court for a kid, why should they be liable for what a dog did? They should be sued and pay, but it's not murder.
How about that, audience? Brian and Violet, we haven't heard from you.
No,
To you, it feels that she's a murderer?
yes, I do. I really do. It was her dogs that killed my child.
Now what?
And all the money in the world is not going to make up for what she did. She needs to go to prison and pay for what she did to me and my family.
Mr. Watson, what if she trained these dogs to attack, which I'm coming to? And Mr. Brenneman here is an expert on this, and he testified at the trial, will tell us what happened. What if she trained them to attack? She knew what they were capable of. It's like leaving guns out in the yard.
Manslaughter is the answer. Murder is doing something on purpose, akin to doing on purpose. The point I'm making to this family and to everybody is you can't criminalize stupidity. You make people pay for stupidity, and when you don't act, you fail to act, it's going too far for the government to penalize that in the form of crime. And I'm concerned not about that you would feel better if somebody goes to prison for the rest of their life. I'm concerned that you're giving permission to the government to criminalize all types of behavior, whether it's with a dog or not, and put people in prison for things they didn't do, meaning their omissions. That's left to the civil court. Make somebody pay like they did in the O.J. case, $75 million.
We have a very specific statute in Kansas, and most states have depraved heart murder statutes. If you are reckless, but you do it under circumstances that show extreme indifference to human life, it rises to the level of murder.
Let me let you hear from a juror when we come back as we discuss this issue of training, because as I understand it, she tried to say these weren't even my dogs first, and then said, and my dogs were never ever trained to attack. But did the prosecution prove otherwise, and how did they do it? We'll be right back.
Brenneman said she was trained in Schützen.
Tom Brenneman must believe she is, but she didn't get trained by me, and I had her since she was 8 weeks.
Ma'am, that dog was Schützen trained.
No, she wasn't.
And you trained the dog, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
You and your husband trained the dog.
I'm going to come back here and say, all right, let me come here now. I was going to go straight. Tom Brenneman, please stand by. He is the gentleman that she says that Mr. Biggs was saying, but Brenneman says he was trained in Schützen. We'll tell you what Schützen training is and why he believes that the dogs were, in fact, trained to attack. But what's going on?
Lisa, I'm just so angry because, and my heart goes out to you. I feel your pain for your child. But I'm so angry because we should not be having this discussion about who's responsible and who murdered, because it should have been taken care of the first time. When this woman was in trouble the first time, why do we have laws that let her repeatedly have animals who can do things that are wrong? We need to deal with this, and I want to know if you're involved with law changing and what we as an audience can do to change this, because our system is so messed up. And I'm emotional because I'm dealing with issues with a child who's destructive and breaking the law, and it's the same thing. The laws need to be changed because they get away with so much and nothing can be done. And it's the same thing with this animal issue. I realize there's an animal activist in the audience, but you know what? The Bible says that we rule over the animals. They do not rule over us, and our children come first.
I understand totally what you're saying, and yet I'm thinking, okay, Rottweilers and Pit Bulls are the ones that we target and say these are dangerous dogs. But there are people who say that Cocker Spaniels are the dogs that bite most often. Mr. Rotson would tell us that, you know, maybe this is going to penalize all owners of large dogs. But what?
Shouldn't something be done the first time you hear something, the dog got out? The first time something should be done. There shouldn't be a second or third time, the first time.
Let's talk about this training. What is Schützen training?
Well, Schützen is a very good sport for civilian, and some police do compete in it. It involves protection training, obedience, and tracking.
And so the video we're seeing here, the dog is taught to get an open mouth bite on the victim?
That's correct. This is basically the dog is required to stop that person, and the dog is judged on his temperament and how hard the dog bites.
So why would a pet owner train their dogs with this technique?
Well, Schutzhund is a very good sport, and 95% of the people in Schutzhund are there for the betterment of training of animals and
So
for
it would be to
good
compete.
temperament. And they compete against each other in Schutzhund trials.
Now, we saw Sabina on the stand say that her dogs were not trained in Schutzhund. You think otherwise?
Yeah, they were not fully trained for Schutzhund, and in fact, they weren't accepted at most of the clubs they went to because a lot of the clubs are very responsible and do not want dogs that are not stable and don't have good nerves and good temperaments to be in their club.
But how do you know they learned a portion of this technique?
I was asked to do a testing on the fourth dog that was in the house of the day, and we did some temperament tests, and we also brought out a bite sleeve and showed that the dog would bite full mouth on a bite sleeve. And without even the handler present, just an animal control officer in German with German commands could command the dog to release the bite, command the dog to do obedience, and command the dog to bite.
For a jury to find this woman guilty of murder, there would have had to have been so many sets of circumstances going into that decision. The deliberation wasn't very long, was it?
We pretty much had our mindset when we got back there. We did, you know, discuss back there.
So talk to me about that when we come back. You know, what was it that caused you to believe she was, in fact, responsible for the death of little 11-year-old Christopher? And what would you do? Would your child know what to do if your child was the one at the bus stop and there's a dog attacking? We're going to run down some tips on how you may be able to save a life. We'll be right back. What was the verdict at this trial?
The jury convicted the defendant of unintentional second-degree murder. They had the opportunity to consider all the lesser offenses, to include involuntary manslaughter and simply allowing her dogs to run loose, and the jury chose to convict for the highest charge that was brought.
And what has she been sentenced to?
She's been sentenced to 146 months, which is the presumptive sentence under Kansas law, and she's presently out on an appeal bond. The case is to be determined by our Supreme Court. In Kansas, we've already made arguments, and the court has a legal decision to make about whether the facts of this case would support such a conviction, and we should find that decision out in a couple of months.
Danette, what convinced you she was responsible, guilty of murder?
The facts that were presented in the courtroom, the repeated warnings that she had, you know, to put the chain on the gate, that the dogs were halfway trained in Schutzhund or had some form of training.
How about what we discussed earlier, Sabina's apparent lack of remorse, unemotional looking at those pictures? Was that a factor?
It had some impression. I mean, it did make an impression on me. She had no emotions throughout the whole courtroom. When she looked at the pictures, she just showed no remorse at all.
I asked you before we started taping today a question that somebody here had about this woman's conduct towards the family.
Yes, I was wondering if she ever called and apologized or said any type of remorse to you.
Nothing.
Not to this day, she hasn't.
See, I mean, the legal system separate. The justice that will take its course. But as a person, wouldn't you want to just reach out, exactly, ask for forgiveness, apologize? I mean, I wonder if she thinks that's hurting her case or something.
That thinking is turning our court system into ecclesiastical courts. It's not the idea to stand up and say, I'm guilty, forgive me.
I said not as part of the courtroom proceedings, but just as after it's over now, one individual to another.
I'm hearing people say, including this juror, that in effect, part of her decision to convict this lady was she showed no remorse. And to me, whether she shows remorse or not during her trial, she may have been too afraid to, she gets convicted.
But isn't this part of almost all legal proceedings? The Ramsey case, they showed no remorse. They They don't seem like they're passionate enough about finding the real killer. This becomes part of all of it, does it not?
And it's a fallacy in the system then that needs to be corrected.
That people don't behave emotionally the way we think they should on the stand.
Well, you don't convict somebody because of how they acted in the courtroom. They could be terrorized and not show a thing. And I noticed at the end of the case, she broke down in tears.
When she heard the conviction.
The verdict, that's right. That's right.
No, and you know what? I agree with you philosophically. I really do agree with you philosophically. But I think if I were sitting on that jury, I would be thinking this is a mother. I think that really is an element to the case.
All right, but her lack of remorse doesn't make her a murderer.
No, it does not.
That's my point.
Point well taken. Point well taken. What do you do when a dog attacks you? I think it is the hardest bit of advice I have ever heard. I don't know how a little child could do it. I don't think I could do it. See what you think when we come back.
Once she's completed serving her sentence, the U.S. government will deport her as a foreign national. She's a German citizen, not an American citizen.
You said you feel compassion for her, and after hearing that, I'm sure a lot of people do, because then those children are going to be motherless, which complicates this case greatly.
I just, I want to say that my heart really goes out to you and your family, and that from today on you will be in my prayers. But I just want to let you guys know that it doesn't matter how much time she spends in prison. Her heart is obviously not in the right place, because she doesn't seem to feel remorse to me, and she's going to be in my prayers too, that she could just realize what her neglect to her dogs has caused.
But also, she's a German citizen. This could be cultural, why she's not expressing emotion in the way that we're used to people expressing emotion. We really don't know. Regardless of that, bringing that part into our discussion here today, there were facts in the case that were presented by the prosecution at trial that convinced a jury that were fact-based, based on warnings, based on her knowledge, based on all kinds of other things that caused them to come down with a murder conviction for this woman. But I appreciate your points so much. Dr. Wayne Hoonhausen is an animal behaviorist. Is that correct?
That's right.
Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Can you stand and tell us what you would do? I mean, if I saw a dog coming at me, like those Rottweilers or a pit bull, I mean, I would run and scream, which I think most people do.
Yeah.
Bad idea.
You need to do the hardest thing in the whole world. You need to be quiet. You need to avoid doing anything that will increase the dog's arousal level, which means you stand quietly, you don't make eye contact, keep your hands next to the body, don't move, don't say a thing.
And what if the dog begins to bite you?
The safest thing to do is go down. Go down into a ball position, a rock position, make a fist with your hands, tuck your knees up, cover your ears. Again, be very, very quiet, be motionless. And most times, the attack will stop at that point.
Will it really, even if there's a pack of dogs around you?
A pack behavior is a little bit different, and they feed into each other's arousal level. And sometimes the pack will not stop, but still, it's the safest thing you can do. Any attempt to yell or scream or push against the animal is going to increase the arousal level, make the damage much worse.
If you have a backpack, if you have a handbag, a briefcase, should you throw that at the dog? To engage the dog in something else?
You can do that, and people will recommend feeding a piece of clothing to the animal, and that gets tricky. With an adult, you can feed a coat or a pocketbook to the animal, have it taken in its mouth, and have some control that way as it sinks its teeth and keeps its teeth sunk into that garment. But with a small child, 4 or 5 years, or maybe even older, you know, that's not going to be a good strategy.
Are the chances are that Christopher, though, with these 3 dogs in the pack, is it likely that no matter what he would have done or could have done, this was just a tragedy in the making?
Yeah. Unfortunately, he couldn't tell that they were nearby. If he could have, the best decision would have been to stay in that tree. He thought he was safe.
He didn't know, and he was protecting his little brother.
Right.
All right. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
We'll be right back.
While in Los Angeles, guests of the Lisa Show stay at the trendy, full-service Beverly Plaza, a boutique-style hotel bordering Beverly Hills and West Hollywood. Inventors, Invention Submission Corporation can help you try to patent your idea and submit it to companies. Call 1-800-933-IDEA for free information.
A lot of you have been asking about the husband that we just saw. correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand, the husband, because he was not as involved with the dogs, was allowed to plead to manslaughter. He was given probation. And if she is deported or incarcerated, he will be the parent of those children, which was probably a part of that plea arrangement. Let's bring it back to where we started, which is this mom and this dad, who I think did a beautiful job today telling a very difficult story. But Brian and Violet came here because they want dog owners to be more responsible, to know their pets better, to take precautions. They want parents to know what their children are up against, even in the safety of their neighborhoods where you never dreamed something like this could happen. And I'm sure that they also want their son to be remembered. Yes. We thank you so very much. And I think that from a legal point of view, and as a pet owner, all of us should be looking at this case, because if it flies, what this means is now that your pet, if that pet goes out and does something, you are legally responsible for it.
Selling. Now here's a good reason to save money.
Have nose will travel. That's becoming a motto for a fire dog in Newton. He's no ordinary dog. As Bryce Madison shows us, Higgins is able to sniff down evidence left behind by arsonists, and that's no picnic in the park.
There's a search going on here. Man and his best friend sniffing down leads. Not to find quail or pheasants, but Abraham Lincoln. This Abe, honest.
He's done a very good job for the department, and very well pleased with him.
He is Higgins, a 3.5-year-old golden retriever, believed to be the only working fire dog in Kansas, capable of smelling out accelerants arsonists use to fuel fires. As part of his training, his master, Randy McBee, puts a single drop of gasoline on a penny. That penny is hidden in an open field.
Our sense of smell is measured in olfactory cells. Human beings have about 5 million, where the canine with a good nose has around 220 million. So they can smell basically 45 times greater than we can, and at greater distances.
Higgins has been used on 20 different fire scenes. He found accelerants at 6 locations where arson was finally determined as the cause. McBee says his partner has never missed yet. 2 of those fires have been in other counties. Higgins was called in to find an accelerant used last month at a large nightclub fire in East Wichita.
The biggest advantage is on a large scene where we don't have any idea where the fire started, or at least not sure. He can cover this very quickly. If there were accelerants used, then he will be able to find those.
It's been 20 minutes now since our gasoline-covered penny was hidden. Now it's showtime for Higgins, and in a matter of seconds, he performs as predicted.
Found it? You found it. Show me. Good boy.
The penny is found, and Higgins gets his reward. Lots of love, praise, and playtime with a rubber ball.
We have a special bond, you know, a bond of trust. He trusts that I'm going to take care of him and I guess keep him from harm's way, and I know he's going to do a good job for me.
Bryce Madison, Eyewitness News, Newton.
Higgins received his training in Newton. He is capable of detecting the odors of 10 different accelerants.
But even more disturbing, stories of man's best friend biting, attacking, even killing. Tonight we begin a week-long series of special reports. A warning, some of this material is graphic. Kate's Delane Matthew investigates dangerous dogs. Delane.
Well, you've seen the news. You've read the headlines. Young boy mauled to death. Rottweiler's friend or foe. The fact is, dogs attacked nearly 1 million people in America last year. Most of them were children. But which ones are doing the attacking? And how do you know your precious puppy won't someday become a dangerous dog? Again, a warning before you watch. This story contains graphic material. The pictures are painful to look at, not only because they're so graphic, but it's hard to believe man's best friend is capable of this. Last year, dogs attacked some 800,000 people in the U.S. Nearly 3,000 of them were letter carriers.
All of a sudden, a large Rottweiler came out from under the tree and grabbed my leg.
But the main choice of prey? Children. According to the U.S. Humane Society, dogs attacked 2 million children in 1996. In 1996,